How's everybody today? Hopefully in good spirits. Today, my son is took an early nap. He's leaving tomorrow early in the morning out of town, and he told me to wake him up for the lecture, but I'll wait and see if he wakes up on his own. Meanwhile, I'll handle the fort all by myself today. And I want to continue a little bit with what we started yesterday. And what we started yesterday was a little bit of politics. Today we're continuing with that politics side of science. And I think it's important to mention that because, people have this idea that science is objective. It's, like math, an equation is objective. It's straightforward. You can't challenge it. And science is a little more complicated than that. Science involves a lot of opinions today, the way it works in reality. It involves a lot of opinions, and people are very strong about their opinions. And so they do politics. What is politics? It means that you censor the other fellow's opinion. In other words, the other fellow's theory. And you don't let it get out because you just don't like it and it competes against yours, and you're saying you're not going to allow that to happen. And there's a lot of that going on. In fact, last 100 years, I would say there's been a lot of that. And that's how mathematical physics has become a monopoly that you cannot challenge unless you go through the equations and through the papers that you would have to write from a mathematical perspective only. You are not allowed to challenge what's out there through from a qualitative point of view. And so if you say that what their conclusions, the mathematicians, what they come up with, if you're saying that their interpretation of the universe, the way the universe actually works, is irrational, what they're proposing is irrational, well, what they do is, they censor you. And they say, look, we don't care about, that's philosophy of science, philosophy of physics, and that's on the other side of campus. And when you go to the other side of campus, you find out that those people won't listen to you either because they get their cues from the mathematical physicists. And that's where you close the circle. You realize that you're never going to get your day in court. And that's a serious problem as I see it, because then what people hear out there and what people reproduce out there are the irrational explanations, the irrational physical interpretations, the irrational mechanisms proposed by mathematical physics for how the universe runs. And so people believe in a lot of this stuff. So they say, well, black holes. You say black holes, but black holes are irrational. Yeah, but that's what the mathematician, the authority in this matter, said. And so you're saying, hold it, these people believe in dark matter, black holes, Big Bang, and so much nonsense that's out there. And you're saying, how is this possible? And the only reason it's possible is that the mathematicians are the only ones interpreting, how this universe runs. They base it on their equations, and they are all flat earthers. They are all providing Ptolemaic explanations, irrational explanations, surrealistic explanations, time travel, time dilation, your twin is 50 years older than you, absolute nonsense, all of it, 120% of it. And people believe in this because it comes from authority. And what this does is take us back to the Middle Ages, where the priests, pastors, and monks, they interpreted the Bible for you. Most people were illiterate. Those few who could read or write usually did it in their own language and not in Latin, which was the language of the high class, of the educated classes. Pretty much like math is today, a language constricted to an elite. And so people had to have the pastor interpret the Bible, God, for them. And so what are the pastor, or really there were no pastors, and there was priests and monks, whatever they told them, they had to believe. And they did believe on the basis of authority. Well, you know, if the bishop says so, if the cardinal says so, who am I to question that? And we're in the same boat today. People don't understand math. They don't understand all these sophisticated equations. Some of them are very far out. They get into such details that, you know, are of no concern to science and have no bearing on the reality of the world. But they get into all these fine equations that they do in their secret little world. And people say, what a genius. And you could say, yeah, that he's a genius in math. But his physical interpretation is irrational. It's irrational. It has no bearing on reality. It has nothing to do with science. And you can't criticize that aspect, because that's not up for grabs. That's not, that's not allowed in science. Science only deals with the math part, not with a qualitative interpretation. And so, yeah, we got a problem, because then 90% of the world out there, especially people who are not religious, and they say, oh, I'm not religious, I'm going to rely on science. And who do they rely on? They rely on these people who are interpreting their mathematical equations in an irrational way, and they believe in that irrationality, in the interpretation that the mathematician gives them. Okay, so what did we cover yesterday? Let me recap here. I got a couple points. First, I started saying that I was accused of not following Quora policy, and or that I violated Quora policy. A lady accused me that I was insulting her, or she took it personally as a personal attack, and I had no intention whatsoever doing that. Put an article, she commented on it, I re-commented, just answered her back, and she got upset with my answer. And I want to distinguish between something which is objective based on definitions, and another one when people take some of these things personally and say, oh, you're attacking me. So I used specifically the word delusion. That's the word I used. And I use it in general terms to refer to someone who has irrational beliefs. And I'm referring to the world in general. I don't apply it usually to any specific person, but sometimes I may. But in this case, I didn't. Used it in general terms. I said, the definition of delusion is someone who believes in irrational theories. And so if someone believes that this universe was created, self-created, like, general relativity proposes, and others believe that there was a superhuman entity out there called God, that he created the universe, well, I say in either case, they're delusional. And that's not attacking any person specifically, whoever I'm talking to. That's in general terms. I'm saying, look, anyone who believes in this nonsense is delusional. And she took that personal. She thought that, or believed that I was attacking her. Apparently, Quora disagreed with her. They haven't acted upon it. I think if you read my comment, you'll find out that I wasn't referring to her specifically. In fact, I didn't know whether she was religious or not, but I felt she was, but I didn't know for sure. She could have been playing devil's advocate. And there's another thing that should be mentioned there, that, I don't plan to comment anymore on Quora. I'm going to turn comments off for everybody. And the reason for that is, a lot of people just come in there to spam you on purpose, or to play devil's advocate to see if you fall and say something you're not supposed to, or like in this girl, misinterpret what I said, and then they denounce you. They turn you over to the police, and they have you arrested. And so I don't want to be arrested by the Quora people. I think it's a good forum to present material. And if I'm banned, well, what can I do? That's life. But I'm trying not to get banned, because I do want people to listen to a different version of things out there. And Quora is a good place to do that. I also mentioned yesterday that the rope model enables Eastern religions to claim to be more rational than science, specifically, mathematics. And you say, you're crazy, Bill. And keep in mind what I'm saying here. I'm saying that, a lot of the Eastern religions, they have this idea that we're connected to the universe somehow. And right now, the only thing they can provide is, we're connected spiritually to the universe. We are one with the universe. And, what the rope model does is allow them to be physically connected as well and justify their spiritual connectedness. Now, that's a double-edged sword. I'll grant that. The sword is a little tricky. You could get on one edge or on the other. But on the one hand, it's good because you have these people who might go out there and do the batting for you. They're going to pinch hit for you. Okay, why? Because they say, hey, now we have we don't have to rely on spirituality only. There's a material basis for our understanding, for our idea that we're connected to the universe. And here it is. It's the rope. Every atom is connected to all others. And that's, I think, a positive side. And if you compare that against quantum, where you have all these disconnected particles, which are not even particles, they're wave functions. And so you have not only wave functions, but even assuming they were little balls, little corpuscles. If they're not connected, then of course you can't produce pull, and in order to fill that blank in your theory, you have to go into irrationality for sure. You can't avoid it. In the case of quantum, they go into the uncertainty principle. You got to explain, for example, the slit experiment. And the slit experiment, when you do it with particles, they have to divide the particle in two and say, well, the particle is at two places at once. And the uncertainty principle allows for it. And so the particle is at both slits simultaneously and then comes into the screen, and that's where they meet. And that's where they produce the fringes. And so they had to do this, and again, that's in reverse, because the uncertainties principle was used to, it came out of their observation, which they couldn't explain, and so they said, well, we're going to come up with the uncertainty principle, and among other things, this means that particle can be at two places at once, or that we don't know where the particle really is, or it's everywhere at once, and that kind of thing. And it's not that the uncertainty principle allows for the particle to do that. It's that they had no interpretation for why the particle does what it does, no rational explanation for it, no mechanism, and they said, okay, let's invent a principle that justifies it, and that was the uncertainty principle. And so it's not that the uncertainty principle, or indeterminacy as it's also called, allows for it. It's just that they had to invent a principle to cover their butts, their holes in their theory. And so again, the Eastern religions might benefit, people who have this idea that we're all interconnected. The rope model obviously allows for that. And I want to make sure that people understand that no way did I ever get this from the Eastern religions. I get it through a totally different thought process that has nothing to do with, especially with Eastern religions, but with religion in general. This had nothing to do with religion. I looked at the wave, transverse wave, 2D plane transverse wave, and I tried to figure that out, and I finally said, this, what we're looking at is a cross-section of a rope, and absolutely had nothing to do with Eastern religions or with interconnectedness. In fact, the interconnectedness came into my brain later on. I said, oh, hold it, if this atom is connected to that one, and this one to this other one, they're all connected. Then that's when the thought came in. I'm not even sure that thought was there that first day. I'd have to look through my notes, but had nothing to do with Eastern religions. So, but anyways, Eastern religions, are probably the beneficiaries of this theory. And the irony is that it might enable them to declare themselves to be more rational than the so-called science coming out of Cambridge and Harvard. Why? Because these people can say, look, now we can justify our spirituality, why we're one with the universe, or why we're all interconnected. And here's the physical backing for that. Here's the foundation. What's the mechanic going to tell them? What's the relativist going to tell them? That it's all particles, photons, electron balls, beads, muons, pions, bosons, and fermions, and whatever. I mean, at some point you got to say, well, look, this is closer to what was the man's name? William of Ockham. Ockham's rule. It's closer to Ockham's rule than what you guys are coming up with over there, you know, in your philosophy departments at the university and your physics department at the university. And in that sense, yeah, Eastern religion might have a comeback with something like the rope model. The other thing I wanted to mention is that here's the dialectic. We had, you know, you have people in the 19th century like Hegel and Marx, and they came up with this clash of ideas. One philosophically, the other one conflict of interest. Marx in that case, where you have dialectic materialism. You have a clash of interests in the real world, where you have the workers against the owners of capital. And there's a clash he called it dialectic materialism. And in that sense, you can also apply this now to religion and science. You can say there's a dialectic, another philosophical or scientific dialectic or dialectic science, where you have, or even religion, where you have a clash of ideas, and now this kind of allows them to produce a synthesis. The religious guy can say, see, we knew all along, or we felt all along that we were interconnected, and now we have a scientific basis for that. And many of the scientists who say, you know, we don't have answers really for a lot of questions. We don't have a visualization what's happening. We can't explain it, this phenomenon or that. And what this allows them to do is now say, you know, now I can explain it, and that also fulfills my side of either spirituality or your understanding. Okay, and so I think it brings also the two groups a little closer together. I don't know about Christianity. I don't know if this is going to help Christianity, because, and I'll get to that in a minute here, you know, the rope model has no place for God. And I'm sorry to say that to a lot of people, but there is no room for God if all that exists are atoms and empty space, like Mr. Democritus and Leucippus, his mentor, boss, or teacher, believed 2,000 plus years ago. They believed that it was atoms and empty space. And then in the 19th and 20th century, we kind of developed the notion that, well, all that is mediated by something we call energy, light, or whatever you want to call it. And we're replacing that energy in the form of waves and photons, photon particles, or corpuscles, wave functions, whatever, or wave packets, whatever you want to call them. And we're replacing and say, look, we're all interconnected. So we have a universe made of atoms and ropes. Now that's a different universe. And yeah, empty space, it's not there. It's empty space is just that, nothing. So we do have, you know, a new model of the universe, and this interconnectedness enables us to get a different picture and bring Democritus back, but in a different format. We're not talking about atoms like saying, you know, because keep in mind, he said atoms in empty space. But what was an atom? The atom was the indivisible. That's what the word atom means, okay? And so what did they invent? They invented subatomic particles. They invented all these bosons and fermions and all this, the standard model of quantum mechanics. So now we only have the indivisible became divisible. And I'm not sure Democritus would agree with that. I'm not sure that's what he had in mind. He just said, you know, all I can imagine is a bunch of particles just floating in space. And that's pretty much what there is out there. All we have to add now is this explanation for the energy that, you know, that goes between them, that this undefined thingy, and that's going to be the rope. And now with a rope, we can say, okay, all atoms are interconnected, and now we have a complete picture of the universe. So what is the status of poor old God? Well, he has no place there. If all there is just atoms and empty space, and interconnected by ropes, which we can call energy or anything you want after that. You can give it any metaphor you want. There is no place for God. And not God the creator, for sure, because You know, we're not talking about the creation of matter. We're saying the universe, all this matter that's been out there, it's always been there, always will be out there. There will be no chance of, at least I can't imagine how this all could come into one point. I discussed that in the book, Why God Doesn't Exist. I do discuss that there, but it's, yeah, I consider it just abstract philosophy, like, you know, nice to shoot the bull at the water cooler, nothing more. It's nice to think about these things and treat them, but I don't really think that the universe can come into one bunch, one ball, a singularity type, not necessarily the zero-dimensional one, you know, I'll put a ball of matter and then explode again. Oscillating universe, it explodes, comes back, explodes, comes back after trillions of years. I'm not sure about that. I'm not convinced that that really happens. I think the universe pretty much is stable, steady state universe. We don't have creation of matter as some people suggested out there, where you have particles appearing from the void and just filling in, you know, constantly the universe. There's no such thing. It's just atoms that cannot convert into space, into nothing. And you can't have nothing convert into atoms. We're done. And the atoms can't leave space because space is nothing and it doesn't have a border, so there's nothing to cross, and so on and so forth. So the idea here is that the universe that we're talking about is new. What is the universe? It's atoms interconnected by ropes. And all of this nonsense that we have out there, all this world, this universe that we call universe, we can call all just the matter of the universe, is just floating, drifting with no purpose whatsoever. So there is no purpose, no God that's directing this whole show, no such thing. At least from my point of view, okay? Okay, so yeah, like I showed yesterday, here we have the Hare Krishnas. These are my new followers. Apparently, these people say that we're connected to the universe. I'm going to give them a few tools and weapons, possibly. You know, I think they have something where they can get out of this whole thing. And one of these fellows contacted me about 1 to 2 months ago. I can't remember exactly. I think it was anywhere between 1 to 2 months. And he criticized me in the same way this girl did, with which I started my talk. And he said, you know, you're going about it the wrong way. You're a very nasty guy. And yeah, I'm an asshole. Believe me, I'm an asshole. And the reason I'm an asshole, well, there's several reasons. One is that's my personality, per se. Lots of Argentines are like me, especially from Buenos Aires. Not Argentine, but we call ourselves porteños. We're from the city of Buenos Aires, the port of Buenos Aires, so we call ourselves the porter, the people from the port, porteños. And yeah, I guess a lot of us are like that over there. And, you know, people in the interior of my country, they hate us. They don't like it. So do other people in South America and Mexico and so on. They don't like us. They say we're too brash, too skeptical, too sarcastic. And, yeah, it's, you know, it's just part of our nature. But there's more than that. It's that, you know, when I got out of prison, I had all these people treat me very meanly. They treated me roughly. And I came in with a theory, just Mr. Nice Guy trying to explain to them a new theory. They would have nothing of it. And that was a problem. It was a problem mainly because, you know, I tried to publish, and I did get to publish here and there, but only in secondary scientific venues, not in the primary ones. All those papers were rejected. I was rejected by Nature, by Science, by a couple others. And so, you know, I realized that there is censorship. It's built in. It's not against me specifically. I'm not saying there's a conspiracy or anything like that. I'm saying what's happening here is that we developed the system that has a built-in censorship apparatus. Okay, it's already built into the system. The people who do the peer reviewing are all mathematicians. And so they want to see equations. They don't want to see you saying, hey, you guys are irrational. Look at what you're saying. They say, you know, we don't care. You're talking to the wrong crowd. You're not talking science. You're talking philosophy. And if you talk philosophy, that's on the other side of campus. And again, like I said earlier, that's a circular argument because those guys get their cues from the mathematicians. So that's another reason why I have the why I attack people in that way. Another one is that I like to wake them up. People don't always realize that this is new, and they say, "Oh yeah, I heard that before. Yeah, waves, fields." No, this is different. I'm not talking about fields. And sometimes they don't even realize. I say, "Well, what's the difference between a field and a thread?" You're talking about magnetic threads. All you did, an electric thread, all you did was, give them new names. It used to be called field. You're just calling them threads. So you got to wake them up with a baseball bat and say, look, the language has changed. People don't realize that I'm introducing a new language. And I think that language is important. You need to establish the foundations of physics. How are we going to talk in physics in order to talk rationally? And by that I mean, that not only can we communicate with each other and understand exactly the same thing, but so that we build it from the bottom up. In other words, I start by saying, do we need objects in physics? And if we do, then we need to define what an object is. And once we define an object, we say, well, do we need to define what location is and what exist or motion is? And I build this foundation, I think, is absolutely necessary so that we're all on the same page. And the funny part is that no one has done this in the last 10,000 years. Not a single physics textbook on the planet begins by telling you what an object is or whether it's necessary in physics. Not one tells you what location is. If you go in there, they start, I look at my physics books from high school now in retrospect, and what do I find? Just equations. In fact, the first subject pretty much is acceleration. It doesn't say, look, let me tell you what motion is. No, it starts with acceleration. Why? Because we need to establish what force is. And then you talk about mass also without defining it. They just loosely say, look, it's the quantity of matter. And so you take that at face value and say, okay, quantity of matter. And then when you go to college, says, no, forget it. Mass is not the quantity of matter. But we couldn't tell you that in high school because you wouldn't understand anything. So it turns out that they're teaching you equations and not physics. And they say, look, all those equations, that's physics. That's where we have a problem. And I have to wake them up with a baseball bat to show them that this is not business as usual. People don't always understand that. They think it's the same thing. And I'm not a very kind guy on the internet. And this fellow, Antonio Sebastian in English, I guess, he's from Spain. And he's, I guess, a Buddhist, or is in love with Eastern religions, or is trying to produce some kind of blend of science and religion, of spirituality and knowledge, any way you want to look at it. And what he did, he contacted me, and he did have a little chat, back and forth on the rope model. And this is essentially what he came up with for his own site. He comes up and says, look, here we have a magnetic thread, electric thread. We have an atom that's made of these threads, and we have the expansion contraction, and it creates a torsion on the rope, and all the ropes from every atom in the universe converge upon the atom, and when it jumps back and forth, it torques the rope and sends this signal we call light. And so that sounds a little familiar to what I came up with, and he put that on his site. You might say, Bill, you're upset because he didn't give you credit. No, I don't pay too much attention to those things, and that's not what got me. What got me is what I'm going to say in a couple minutes. But just let's continue. Here he describes again in more detail, how an atom is connected to other atoms, and they're all connected by electromagnetic ropes. He liked the system. And what is it that triggered my dissatisfaction, I'll say, with what he's done? What triggered it is that sometimes these things are put to the wrong use. And again, I have this problem with religions taking over the rope. On the one hand, it's good because they go, like I said, they serve as pinch hitters for you. They go up there and they do the batting for you. They go out there and trash the so-called scientists. And of course, there's a lot more Eastern religionists and scientists on the planet, so you get at least a big army out there, if that's an advantage. But then you don't want an army of zombies behind you. Okay, I guess you understand what I'm trying to say there. And that's pretty much the situation. What does this fellow say? This is where I get tripped up by him. He says, look, materialism is the doctrine that only matter is real. And he looks at this as saying, materialism is something you want to shun, you want to get rid of. But the rope is materialism. It's 150% materialism. The rope says there is no God, no spirituality, no floating spirits out there. The rope says all there is are atoms and ropes. That's it. There's not even space. It's just atoms and ropes. All atoms are interconnected by ropes. And there is no room for God, unless God is made of atoms. If anyone wants to defend that point of view, then I'll gladly get into that fight. But unless, and of course, then God would have, he would have a line of direction directly to me. I should be able to, whether I see him or not, or touch him. There should be a straight line of, a rope connecting one of his atoms to one of my atoms, right? And that's the only way we can conceive of the God of the Bible, at least, right? Whether Shamu says maybe God, I guess G-D is the rope. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to say that the whole shebang is God, okay, fine, no problem. But then, what does the word God mean? That's where you get into that problem. I'm talking about the old-fashioned God, the traditional God, the God of the Bible, the guy who has a magic wand and makes everything. In other words, there were no atoms until he came aboard, and that's where we have a little bit of problems there. And again, this guy talks about materialism. He's like disdaining it. He says, materialism. The world is spiritual. No, the world is only matter. Only matter. There is no such thing as spirituality. Spirituality is what humans have specifically. Other animals might have a certain level of conscience, conscientiousness, or whatever you want to call that. Reasoning process. There must be, like elephants and dolphins and monkeys, maybe chimps and so on. They probably have some level of abstractions. They do have that. They don't have the ability to think to such a degree as we do, but they do have, some higher level than ants and other bugs or whatever. Other than that, what can we say? Everything is matter. There is no such thing as spirituality. No standalone object, called soul or conscience or spirit, running around. Hopefully not, because, otherwise I drank too much beer. There is no such standalone object running out there. And if there is no such thing as spirituality standing out there, then spirituality, conscience, mind, whatever you want to call it, is a process. It's like talking about electricity or plasma. Those are processes. And I can't say that mind is something, I can bring to you. I can bring you the head of someone, maybe his brain, but I can't bring you mind. Mind is what the brain does. And so you can't talk about spirituality, especially like existing separate from the body. I die, my spirit goes to, mine's going to go south, to hell. No such thing. No such thing. Once you die, that's it. Sorry, that was it. So if you didn't do something good with your life while you were still here, moving your fingers, that's it. You don't get a second chance. And so there's no afterlife experiences or none of that nonsense. And I also was struck by his comment. I don't know exactly what his context is there. It is now enforced with all the power of the state. Materialism? I thought the state did something quite different. I thought they pushed spirituality. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's got a better focus on that. If there is another standalone object, another bundle of rope, say, we couldn't see it in the rope mode because we're not going to. Well, that's one of the issues that I raise in my book. and that is that possibility. Again, possibility. This is, again, food for thought. This is for discussion at the water cooler. And the argument goes like this. There could be another parallel universe, we could say. It's bad to use the word universe, but I don't have another word for it. Another category superior or more encompassing, like galaxy 2, another universe. I don't know what other words to use. I'll just say a bundle of matter. There could be another bundle of matter similar to our universe. Okay, so our universe, we'll just call it like that, is a whole bunch of atoms. We're interconnected, and light in our universe travels at 300,000 kilometers per second, and we have the correct masses of the proton, of the electron shell, of all this stuff. There are some key parameters that we cannot violate because they're built into the structure of the universe itself, in the amount of matter that the universe has and the interconnections. But let's assume there's a parallel universe out there, another universe which is not connected to ours. In other words, here's a whole bunch of atoms there. They're also interconnected by ropes. It's got the same qualitative structure, but it's got a different quantitative structure. In other words, different amounts. Let's say they have more matter over there. Well, maybe, just maybe, it's possible that that universe, which is parallel to us, has a different speed of light. Maybe it has a different mass for the fundamental constants, different fundamental constants. For example, the mass of the electron could be different. The mass of the atom hydrogen atom could be different, and so on. So there could be two universes in that sense. Whether that's true or not, obviously, I can't bring you proof and say, here it is. That's only food for thought for the water cooler. I don't think you can do any more than that. Standalone object, yeah, it is an object in the sense, the universe is an object in that sense, in the sense that if it's got a finite amount of matter, if it's the number of atoms are finite, whatever that number is, I haven't begun to count it yet, but let's assume there's a finite amount of matter, finite number of atoms, then yes, you can say, the whole shebang is one object. Does it exist? Only if there's another such universe next to it. Then you can say, look, it exists because it has location with respect to that universe. And only under those circumstances can we talk about it being an object. Object, I guess you could still get away with, but you can't talk about the location of the universe. And for that matter, then you can't use the word exist in that context. Only in parallel universes can you talk about location, motion of the universe, of the whole thing with respect to another universe, and that sort of thing. Only in that context. Otherwise, if we're going to use our words consistently, we can say the universe does not exist. The bundle of matter, this thing we call universe, if it's the only one, there's no parallel universe out there, then it does not exist. You can't use the word exist. And obviously, you can say that it's an object, yeah. But see, an object has to have shape. And that creates a problem with the universe because it means that, it's quite unlike what we have here. You would have to stand outside of the universe from a bird's eye perspective and see the universe over there. Imagine God. Okay, let's assume for the sake of argument that God exists. Okay, so God's outside the universe. What does he see? Well, he sees this bundle of matter over there, far away, far from his eye, bird's eye view. Okay, but if he exists, we were saying that he's made out of atoms, and if he exists, he's connected to all our atoms. But what has he done to the universe? By getting farther away, he's distorted the shape of the universe. So what is the shape of the universe? If God is part of the universe and he's being pulled out and, skewing it so much. You see my point? So I'm not sure you can talk about the shape of the universe. Obviously, it's got to have some kind of shape. If we could stand outside of it and have a bird's eye view and be a spirit of some kind, just mind looking at it, then yeah, maybe you can talk about shape of the universe. Otherwise, it's, again, a topic for the water cooler only. Nothing, because it's not connected to his eyeballs if he's outside of it. Yeah, but remember, Shamu, you got an issue here, and that's that you're standing. God is standing outside the universe, and if he's part of our universe, he is distorting the universe by standing so far out in order to see it from a bird's eye perspective. And then what does God look like? I mean, is he bigger than the whole universe? Is he smaller than it? Is he like a little ant compared to the elephant, or is he an elephant compared to the ant? What are we talking about here? For God to even interact with it means he's part of it and connected with it. Yeah, and of course, otherwise you're using magic, and that's true too. If God comes in there with his magic wand and he wants to influence our universe physically, then he's got to be connected. If he's going to influence our universe spiritually, then we're introducing black magic. Then you're saying, look, he's moving his magic wand, and without a mediator, he's causing some kind of effect on earth. And that's where the spirituality stuff comes in, where I discussed this a couple of weeks ago, where they came up with the ether. And what was the ether? Ether was this fifth element that was outside beyond the moon, in a region beyond the moon. What was the purpose of the ether? The ether was so that the gods, which were out there in the stars, they can communicate with us without a medium. The ether was the medium, but the ether at the same time was the spirituality, that the soul that they put into us and made us be like we are. The influence of the stars, of the gods, and whatever was out there. And it influences you spiritually, not materially. So this is the weird part. But anyways, a lot of that is food for thought. A lot of that is for the water cooler. If you're going to stick strictly with physics, then this has to go. Materialism is the law of the land, the law of physics. If we're going to talk about laws, this is the law of physics. Physics only deals with objects. And, people don't like that. People who are spiritually inclined, they don't like that. They would like to think there's something else out there, and that, there is some kind of meaning to life or whatever. All bunk. That's all I can tell you from my point of view. In fact, that's what Mr. Sebastian says. He says the following. Let's see if I can make this a little bigger. Today, children are indoctrinated. Look at where he's going with all this. He says, children are indoctrinated to believe that their life is an accident and has no purpose. This is the reason why 1 in 5 Americans are on some kind of prescribed psychotropic drug. There's nothing more damaging to the human psyche than the belief that life is meaningless. I'm sorry to say, life is meaningless. There is no meaning to life, okay? What do I mean by this? I mean that look at a plant. Why was the plant born? What was the purpose? I mean, when you're talking about meaning, you're talking about purpose. You're talking about why. You're trying to answer the question why. And what you're trying to look for is the reason, the purpose for that thing. You're no longer talking about physics. Now you're talking about philosophy. Because philosophy deals with not only with concepts, but it deals with reason and purpose. Okay? That's how I divide science. Physics on one side, objects and mechanisms. Okay? Causes. And philosophy on the other side deals with concepts, purpose, and reason. And so we talk about meaning, you're no longer in physics. Okay? There's no reason for gravity. There's a cause for gravity, not a reason. Okay? And now if you're talking about philosophy, the meaning of life, the reason, was there a reason? Was there a purpose? Well, there was no purpose for me. I'm sure when my mother made me, she had no purpose in mind. She just got pregnant, and that's when I came out to her. There is no purpose for me. All I did was live, and then I die, and I'm gone, and that's it for me. There's nothing more after that. So there is no purpose. Do I have purpose in life? Yeah, that's a different question. Do I have goals? Do I have purposes, reasons for doing things? Yeah, of course. But to say that my life had a reason, like fulfill some kind of purpose here on earth, to bring the rope model to the world, Could have been someone else. It doesn't matter. There is no purpose. There is no purpose to life. You just live life. You try to be happy or live the most fulfillment life that you can. Have great experiences. I had great experiences in my life, so I don't complain. I wish a lot of people would have similar experiences, and that's it. It doesn't get beyond that. You know, you live your life. That's it. You're done. As you keep churning out content. Let me read it completely. My son beats me up when I don't. There's plenty more after that as long as you keep churning out content. Okay? Yeah, I guess you could also say that about heaven and hell. You know, there's plenty more out there. You know, eternity must be... in fact, you know, many times I wonder whether eternity is such a blessing. You know, a lot of these religious folk, they say, oh, you know, my soul's going to live eternally, and I'm not sure that's a good deal. You know, after a while, I think God would like to be able to put a gun to his mouth and blow his brains out, because he's seen the same thing over and over and over. I mean, one thing is to live 1,000 years. That might be pretty good, but after a while, you say, I want to die. I want to call it quits. And imagine not being able to die. You're God. Not being able to die. There's no one around to talk to, you know, no goddess out there. That was, you know, the Greeks had that, but not the Christian God. He's all alone out there. Maybe the devil, the angels, I don't know, they keep him company. Maybe, I don't know. But can you imagine not being able to die? Just being conscious for the rest of eternity? That must be quite a punishment. So it's like I always say, what God envies in man is his mortality. Yeah, we envy his immortality. He envies our mortality. Okay. Anyways, life is meaningless, and here's another comment that he made, which just blew my mind. This is Antonio Sebastian, the founder of Quantum Mechanics for Your Soul. He's even got a little acronym there, QM4YS. Okay, so what does Mr. Sebastian say? He says he has technical authority. Oh, I love the word authority. You know, we don't have authority in science. So whenever someone says, mentions the word authority, you know, he's talking bunk. Bunkers, okay? He's not talking sensible. You never want to respect authority. You got to make up your own mind. I'm sorry. There is no priest that can make up his mind for you. No priest that can love for you. No priest that can think for you. You got to do the thinking for yourself. And people can't understand that. They say, oh, look, the mathematician told me this and that. Did you do any thinking about that? Did you reason it? Did you do any research? Or did you just believe it because the guy has authority? And that's what this guy is saying, authority. He brings that word in there. And then he says he's trained classically in Buddhist monasteries, occult, and Kabbalah. Okay, so he's into something else that is beyond materialism. He's in this spiritual world, you can call it. I'm not sure if any of that is any good. And so what is QM for your soul? Well, here he says it offers a scientific antidote to all your troubles. Scientific, and that's his site. How do I fix me? I fix me with a beer, always. No problem there. But he says offers a scientific antidote. Where does he get this? What's the scientific part? I mean, he's talking about spirituality, talking about, you know, all the problems that humans have, especially the new generation, drugs and whatever. And he says, you know, he offers a scientific antidote. And I'm saying, okay, let's see what he's got to offer. What's this scientific part of his antidote? And this is what he's saying here. He says the QM4YS system is not a New Age fantasy or wishful thinking. It is a scientific model that explains the arising of human suffering and its solution. And what made me tremble is he put booze in there. Can you imagine? You know, he's removing booze. And, you know, that's for sure a religion I can't handle for some reason. And I'm saying, well, isn't what he's proposing, this Buddhism, this mix of Eastern religion and the rope, isn't Buddhism to begin with a religion? And it makes me kind of wonder, because these people don't believe that Buddhism is a religion. And so then you have to answer the question, what do we mean by religion? And people say, well, religion is God. It's belief in God, or disbelief in God. In the case of atheism, another religion. So people have this notion. And I'm saying, no, religion is opinion, belief. If you have an opinion, if you offer belief in the context of science, we'll call that religion. Anything that is not objective in explanation, a mechanism, just objective, I explain to you, you understand the mechanism, you watch the movie, you understand what I'm proposing, that's where science dies. Anything that continues beyond that line, that's religion. So if you have an opinion, and I have my own opinions, I have my own religion. So, if I come in there and try to force my religion down your throat, well, I'm doing religion, I'm not doing science anymore. And that part of my presentation should be recognized as religion. The scientific part is the objective explanation of a mechanism. How does a car work? I explain it, you understood, we're done with science. That's the scientific part. It ended there. You understood, we're off to new, horizons. And just in case, look, see if they're, okay. Okay, so the guy is trying to sell this QM4 YS, quantum mechanics for your soul, and he uses quantum mechanics. I don't know what that's got to do with the rope model. So again, that tripped me up a little bit, because he says the rope model for your soul. Okay, I said, okay, that sounds a little better, but quantum mechanics, what's quantum mechanics got to do with a rope? Why is he putting QM together with a soul and introducing the rope? I'm sure the mechanics won't appreciate that either. They're going to say, look, why are you mixing us up with a rope? Why are you calling your blend of science and religion QM when QM has nothing to do with RH? So we got a problem there as well. His acronym, his title for his crusade, his whatever he's doing there, whatever he's selling door to door, doesn't jive. It doesn't match there, okay? Okay, so what is he trying to do? He's trying to match or blend religion with science. And this is the only part that I kind of liked about what he said. He says, the quantum mechanics for your soul, which I don't know why he uses quantum mechanics, system is the ultimate red pill, because it encourages you to look at primary evidence and to believe in your own common sense. That part I like, at least the part about common sense. I don't like the primary evidence. Evidence is outlawed in science. Evidence is used to persuade, and that's what he's trying to do here. He says, look, please believe me because, we have evidence. No, that's wrong. It's not, science is not about belief, that's religion. What we do in science is explain objectively. For the first time in history, several independent scientific hypotheses, thank you, okay, have been combined into one coherent and logical explanation for the form, structure, and behavior of the subatomic universe. Okay, so far so good. The QM4YS system unites the phenomenon of magnetic attraction, the behavior of light, subatomic structure, morphogenetic fields. I hate that word fields, but yeah, okay, I guess if he's talking in tongues, and morphic resonance, whatever that is either. Together, these hypotheses should be hypotheses, okay, tentatively offer us a way to understand the world and our own inner life. And here comes, the begging, said, but we need your help. Oh man, we need your help. That's where it gets a little dangerous. Now, he says this because the help that he's seeking, he says this at the end, he says, we want your ideas. He's not saying, send me your money, not yet at least. He's saying, we want your ideas. What ideas do we want? We want your stories, because he wants to introduce those stories as evidence. What is he talking about? Well, he's talking about spiritual things of interconnectedness. So he says, tell us your story. Do you have this feeling that someone's watching you? Do you communicate with the birds? So they're saying, so see, all these stories point to the rope. And that's how he plans to sell this, or this is his intention, By the way, what is a red pill and a blue pill? I had to look that up exactly. It says red pill, knowledge, freedom, uncertainty, and the brutal truths of reality. And the blue pill is security, happiness, beauty, and the blissful ignorance of illusion. So you got to choose which pill you're going to swallow. Okay, you want to be happy? Well, you know which one to take. Okay, what other things upset me? Well, he brings in dark matter. Let's see if I can make this a little bigger here. And move aside a little bit. He says, look, you know, all this dark matter, and he's taking all these words, these phrases that people are familiar with from the literature, from the scientific literature, mathematics, and he's trying to incorporate quantum mechanics, dark matter. You know, I mean, he's probably going to talk about your black hole also, whatever. But see, he's trying to incorporate dark matter because he knows it's popular out there. He's trying to incorporate it in his blend of RH with Eastern religion, apparently Buddhism. So you can see how he's coming up with. He's using the phrases, the popular phrases, and he knows they're selling items. These are items that he knows people have already bought. So he's just going to sell them the same phrase: dark matter, Big Bang. He's going to justify it in one way or another under the rope model. Okay, so that's dark matter that he uses there, and then he has this. Where is it? Here it is. He comes up with another thing that killed me, and that's, you know, you have the field, and now he comes up with a love field. I love this one. The power of love connects living beings. Okay, so now we have, it's not the rope that's connecting all the atoms, it's love that connects all beings, and that's where he wants your stories. Do you have love in your life? Does it connect you with someone else? Ah, the rope. I have a physical interpretation for why you love that person. You're connected physically, that sort of thing. So he's trying to, you know, unite these words, the blend mathematics with the rope model. And apart from mathematics are the phrases that are already out there. Big Bang, I'm sure. I haven't seen it, but it's just a matter of time. He'll put it in there. Dark matter, I'm sure. Big black hole, time travel probably. And he's going to harp on the interconnectedness part of spirituality. You know, I'm connected to you, and I thought I could think and understand what you're thinking. Could you? Yeah, you were thinking about this, right? About going to the party on Saturday. Yeah, how did you know? Well, we're connected by the ropes. So that's how he's going to handle this. I'm convinced of this. You know, I see where he's going with all this, and to some degree, it's troubling because, you know, it's appropriation or expropriation, using the rope for his own needs, spiritual needs, or maybe to make money, or who knows for what. And you know, I did, you know, not like very much the fact that he sees we need more evidence. In science, we don't use evidence. I do present evidence. I do present evidence for the rope. And what sort of evidence do I use? And again, that's the religious part of my presentation. That's the, I can't say spiritual because it's nothing to do with spirituality, but it is the persuasion part of my presentation. What is it? I'm saying, look, what have we done in the last 150 years since the days of Faraday and Maxwell? Well, we've noticed that light has undulating properties. It has an electric and magnetic field, and then it's related somehow, that same electromagnetic field or electromagnetism is related also to magnets. You know, somehow it's involved in there and allows magnets to attract and repel each other. And we have this gut feeling that it's related to the gut, the grand unified theory, where light and gravity are somehow related to each other, but we don't know. And all I can do is introduce evidence and say, look, what these people have been doing for the 150 years is looking at something without understanding the mediator. once we put the correct mediator in there, we can understand light, the rope. That's the electromagnetic wave. Cross-section is the 2D plane transverse wave. We can understand gravity. You have all these ropes connected from every atom in the universe, and as the two objects approach, the ropes fan out, and the object is accelerated towards its target, to the second object. And now we can put all these together. And magnetism, you have the clashing in the case of repulsion, and you have the two going in the same direction and just, pulling on each other to produce the magnetic fields that surround a magnet. That's all evidence that I'm introducing. And that should be put into proper context. And I have no problem with people saying, you're introducing evidence. Yeah. And I'm trying to persuade you. Yes. But what I'm trying to get you to see is that if these things have been established, firmly established, that light has undulating properties, it has this electric and magnetic field, it's related to gravity, it can explain, it's also this electromagnetism can explain the magnetic properties of two magnets. Well, here it's, I can use this same cookie cutter that I built this model, and I can apply it here, 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 and there. So if I can apply it here and there, it gives you a good feeling that you're on the right track. That's all, and that's all you got to think, because there's no way you're ever going to see the electromagnetic rope. There's no way you're ever going to see the magnetic field that surrounds a magnet. All you're going to do is continue to sprinkle iron filings over it and say, look, they align in a certain way. That's the best you can get out of that. You're never going to see light. You're never going to see the magnetic field. You're never going to see gravity. So don't look for it. Don't get your SEM, your atomic force microscope, and try to see the invisibility, the invisible world of Mother Nature, the invisibility that interacts between objects. It's never going to happen. By definition, the mediator that Mother Nature uses is invisible. This means it's beyond vision forevermore. So all we can do is make an assumption. We have to simulate the phenomena that we see out there with different models. You can use particles here. You can say, okay, let's use the wave. I'll grant it, even though a wave is not a physical object. Here's the rope. Again, you got to reject the wave packet. There's no such monster. And if you're going to use particles, then use particles. Don't tell me it's at the end of your presentation that it's a wave function, an equation that I've been moving all along. So right now, the official dumb, mainstream, it has no true mediator, no physical mediator, not one that is accepted in physics if we define the fundamental the foundations of it. Once we define the foundations, you can't get out of that. And you can't say, oh, but I don't like the foundations because they destroy my theory, my religion. No, you can't do that. Let's define the foundations first. Do we need objects? Yes. Okay, then forget about using concepts as mediators. You can't use the word field as a mediator. You can't use the word energy as a mediator. You can't use the word mass. Those are outlawed. And yeah, people don't like that because it instantly destroys their religion. And so, yeah, this guy is trying to blend things, but he's trying to make a buck. That's all I can imagine. He's trying to make a buck. Why? Because he's going out there and he's saying, okay, people are into dark matter. They love this word. They love this phrase. They say it comes from science. I'm just going to take this word dark matter, this phrase, or this term, dark matter. I'm going to incorporate it. And I like the rope hypothesis. I'm going to incorporate that too. And I like Buddhism because, at least, I guess 1/3 of the universe must be Buddhist. Half of Asia is Buddhist. Okay, so he says, I can sell a lot of whatever he's selling. I can sell a lot of philosophy out here. I'll just blend all these together. And I'll get the guys from science that deal with dark matter. I'll get the guys from religion who deal with, oneness with the universe. And I'll get the rope from Bill Gates and, tie it all together. And he's made this blend that he's selling on the internet, making a buck on it. I don't care about any of that. The part that troubles me is the misappropriation the fact that he's blending, these unrelated things just to make a buck. So he's a charlatan. That's the way I see it. He's a charlatan. He's just trying to sell, Big Bang together with Buddha. That kind of mixture, and he's incorporating the rope. Giving me credit, I don't give a shit. I don't care if he doesn't give me credit. Then I don't care about that stuff. But I do care about him, leading the flock in the wrong direction, and then people saying, "Oh, look, Bill's theory was used for Buddhism, to prop up Buddhism." And people continue to be spiritual, and they don't realize that the rope model negates spirituality. In other words, in the sense that all that exists are just atoms and empty space. We get rid of the space, atoms and ropes that interconnect them. That's it. That's what's out there. That's the reality. If we're going to use the word reality, we use the word exist. That's what's out there, and that's what's in here as well, everywhere, me included. That's all there is, atoms and ropes. Any room for God there? Of course not. Any room for fields and what this guy mentions? I haven't seen the word energy yet, but he does mention fields. And no, there's no room for fields either. You either use the threads to do your fields with, or you stick to spirituality. But since the guy wants to give some kind of materialism behind his spirituality, that's where the rope comes in handy for him. Anyways, that's politics for you. And what can I say? That's the world in which we live these days. With that, I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow we have a totally different subject, which is the one I was going to start on Sunday. And I'm going to get into that tomorrow. That's a very interesting, fascinating subject as far as I'm concerned. And I'm going to tear these people to bits. I'm going to have a lot of fun with it. So I hope you join me, and we'll see you then. Same time, same station. See you then. Bye-bye.